Interesting questions. Let me first remind you that if we talk about Islam, we're talking first of all about two different things. We're using the word in two senses. We're using it as the equivalent of Christianity. That means a religion in the strict sense, belief and worship and, say, ecclesiastical organization. We're also using it as the equivalent of Christendom, meaning a whole civilization, including many things besides religion, including things that may even be hostile to the religion. So, and we're also talking about more than 14 centuries of history and a historical and cultural tradition of enormous richness and diversity. That being said, let me take up your three accusations that Islam is expansionist. Yes, of course, Islam and Christianity are the only two universal religions in the sense that they believe that theirs is the last word, God's last word to humanity. Most other religions adopt what is sometimes known as a relativist position. You know, you have your religion, I have my religion. Just as humanity invented different languages to talk to each other, they invented different religions to talk to God, and God understands all of them. Perhaps not equally well, but all of them. Now, Christians and Muslims are really the only people who don't take that position. They share the belief that they are the fortunate recipients of God's final message to humanity, which it is therefore their duty not to keep selfishly for themselves, but to share with others. So there is, in a triumphalist religion of this kind, an inherent expansionism. In this sense, Christianity and Islam are both expansionist, and necessarily so from the very form of their doctrines, their beliefs, their central beliefs. Obviously, expanding may take different forms, of which force of arms is just one. And both have quite a record of expansion by force of arms. One respect in which they differ is missionary activities, which is much more organized in the Christian world than in the Muslim world, but nevertheless, Islam also has its missionary activities. Now, your second point was violent. The interesting thing is that if you look at the texts, certainly Islam would appear to be more violent than Christianity. I mean, at no point in their scriptures or teachings are Muslims told to turn the other cheek or to love their enemies. This is totally alien, nor do they have any expectation, in the words of Isaiah, of beating their swords into plowshares or their spears into pruning hooks. On the other hand, if you look at the record of Islam and Christianity in terms of armed action against unbelievers, militancy, suppression and the rest, they're not all that different. In theory, the Christian position is vastly more pacific. In practice, the one is as bad as the other, if you look at the record. And the Christian record is distinctly worse on your third point, namely tolerance. The Islamic position is classically defined. There is tolerance. As I said before, the Quran says there is no compulsion in religion. That is a verse in the Quran. And tolerance is not just permitted but required. However, it is limited in two senses. It is limited to monotheists recognized as such and as recipients of revelation by Islam. And it's limited also in another respect, in that they enjoy some, but not all, of the rights enjoyed by the dominant group. Now, by the standards of the Western world until fairly recently, Islamic tolerance was vastly greater than anything that was available in Europe. That's why, I mean, people often compare the struggle between Islam and Christendom with the Cold War. Yes, there are many parallels, but remember that then the movement of refugees was almost entirely from Christendom to Islam. So on that point, tolerance, I think their record is better. The difficulty now is that this kind of tolerance is no longer acceptable by modern standards. You see this very clearly in the position of the Christian minorities in Muslim countries. Previously, the Christian minorities in Muslim countries, and also the Jewish minorities for that matter, had a very considerable measure of internal autonomy. Not only were they free to practice their religions, they were even free to enforce their own laws and run their own affairs. In that respect, they enjoyed a greater tolerance than is now enjoyed anywhere in the Western world. But that changed with the introduction of modern ideas. They brought in the notion of second-class citizens. Yes, they were indeed second-class citizens. But second-class citizenship, respected and maintained by law, is a lot better than no citizenship at all, which is what happened in the West in the past and what is happening in the East now. This is a perfect example of the point that I was making before, that the old order, with its merits, admittedly its limitations, but with its very definite merits, has been disrupted, and the new, better order has simply not materialized.